Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Last First Date Radio. I'm so glad you've joined us here today. I am Sandy Weiner, and I am the founder of LastFirstDate.com. I am the dating and relationship coach for women over 40 who are ready to attract and sustain a lasting, loving relationship. Often we make mistakes at the beginning and part of our lives where we have what I would call like test run relationships, the relationships that don't work out. And we learn so much as people in midlife. Hopefully we are wiser, we know better, and we do better. I believe midlife daters do it better. So that's my feeling. And we have a great show coming up for you today. I'm going to be speaking with psychologists and authors Antonio Borrello and his ex-wife Theresa Pavone, or Pavone. I'll find out if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. And we're going to be talking about uncovering dating and relationship hacks to succeed at online dating. They just wrote a book together, and it's a really fascinating story how they both wrote about their dating experiences after their divorce. And since they're both psychologists, it's going to be a really interesting show. And as a dating coach myself, it is my mission to help women over 40 recognize and attract the qualities in a man that make him date-worthy and relationship-worthy, and learning the skills to make a relationship last. Most women who come to me for support are great at being moms, and they're really successful in the workforce. They have great friends, and they only have challenges really in the man department, in attracting the right men, in knowing how to recognize red flags early on enough. And one of the mistakes that I notice over and over again is that for women who grew up in the 60s, as most women over 40 have, they have achieved a high degree of success in their careers by being competitive and aggressive, and they often bring those same things to dating, the same aggression, the same competition, and that is a real turnoff to the men that they're attracted to. They don't realize it, but it often makes a man question whether he should date her or hire her for his next job. So you don't want to be in the friend zone. You don't want to be making mistakes that sabotage your dating success. And it's hard to see your own dating behavior when you're too close to the situation. So I want you to find a loving relationship, and that's why I created a free guide where I explain the top 3 dating mistakes that midlife daters make and how to turn them around so you can find lasting love. This is my gift to you. So if you want your copy, all you have to do is go to my website, lastfirstdate.com, and sign up on my homepage. I want you to go on your last first date. Today's show is sponsored by Audible.com. They are a leading provider of spoken audio entertainment and information. You can listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you like. Get a free book when you sign up for a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/lastfirstdate. And now I'd like to introduce my guests. Antonio Borrello is a Ph.D. He's a psychologist and marriage relationship counselor. He spent the past 20 years as a professor and in private practice as a clinical psychologist specializing in relationship therapy. His ex-wife, Theresa Pavone, is also a psychologist, and she's also an inspiring author. She's an industrial and organizational psychologist. She prides herself on improving relationships in the workplace with effective coaching and work-life balance techniques. And they came together to write a book about dating perspectives and ways to succeed in dating in the digital age. So welcome to the show, Antonio and Theresa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
We're happy to be here, and as they say, ladies first, right?
Always, right?
Always, okay. Thank you for that great introduction. Oh, it's Pavone, but you know what, Sandy, I'll take Pavone. That. I've been called worse. I've been called better, so either's fine. We're very excited to be here today. Your show's incredible, and we've had the opportunity to listen to several of them, and this has just seemed to fit in so well regarding relationships. And, you know, it's funny, we're a couple who we were married at the Vatican. It was a fairy tale wedding in 2001. We had the blessing by Pope John, who's now canonized a saint, and then we found ourselves divorced in 2012. So we were married at the Vatican and divorced in Detroit, and you know, we went through our trials and tribulations, and it was really a terrible adjustment period. But what we realized was, most importantly, we had to redefine our relationship. We had children. Our children today, Gianna and Antonio, they're 8 and 10, and they're still at a very impressionable age. And it was imperative that we figured out how to redefine our relationship. So this book would have never been written if we didn't figure out how to get to that place first.
Well, I love
that. Lisa, that sounded wonderful.
No, that's what happened. You were right there.
Antonio, you have the yes, dear down pat, which is great.
I do.
I do. Both marriage and post-divorce relationships, you see?
Yes.
You're wonderful,
I've certainly
honey.
learned. I've certainly learned. And exactly. But Teresa's absolutely right. We did have, we were married for 10 years, and we had wonderful children, and we realized probably 2 or 3 years prior to getting divorced that, things weren't as good as they should be or as good as they could be, and perhaps our relationship as a married couple wasn't a good one, and we, like many people going through their struggles, we were fighting and arguing and always upset with one another, and it really put our kids in a bad situation. So it took a long time, I think probably longer than most couples, to make the decision to get a divorce, and that was probably because we were both in this, both psychologists, both in this field. I was, someone who prided himself on helping people to get through their relationship struggles and to improve their relationships, and I did most of my work in marriage counseling, and how could I go through a divorce? How could my own marriage fail? But we did get divorced, and then I felt like I had this identity crisis, and I felt like I questioned everything about myself, about my work, about my ability as a psychologist, and all of these things. And at the same time, I had been working on this relationship book. And when we went through a divorce, and shortly thereafter, we both started dating again. And I thought, there's a lot of things that have changed since I was last dating, But I couldn't seem to get the book completed. I had some kind of block, and it was because I felt like I have this issue, this credibility issue, and at the same time, Theresa and I were working on our relationship and on improving it and getting to a good place with one another. And I knew that if she were to help me to do this, and if we did this, if we were able to come together and write this relationship book, then we could show the world that we really practice what we preach, and everything is about the relationships that we maintain with the people that are important to us. And so I asked her, and she thought I was crazy, and I know she has her side of that story, but I talked to her a few times, and I said, hey, listen, if you do this, it can be a great thing, for both of us, and can be great for our kids, and so she reluctantly decided to embrace it, and now she's on board, big time, and we did it. So we're happy to and very proud to talk about it.
Well, I'll let Theresa speak to her story in a minute, but I want to reflect on both of your stories for a second and just say that I give you guys a lot of credit for realizing what was in the best interest of your children. I think a lot of couples have tremendous difficulty rising up to their highest selves when it comes to looking outside of themselves, and and looking at the impact that they have on their children. And a lot of people stay together for a really long time because of the kids, because they think it's better for the kids. And Theresa, you said that the effect of your relationship on your children, that it was really, and actually, Antonio, you just said that too, that it took its toll on your kids.
Right. And
I think that's something that people don't realize, And I grew up in a home where my parents were really ill-suited. They were always arguing, and I begged my mother to get divorced at the age of 16. I just said, "Why are you married?" I didn't understand how they could possibly stay together, and she thought I was crazy. Like, I think in those days nobody was getting divorced very regularly. I mean, it was certainly not as easy as today, but it took her a very long time. I think they waited about 7 more years until we were all out of the house to get divorced. And in retrospect, I'm not sure how the divorce would have impacted us because of how they would have managed divorce. So it's important both, to get out of a relationship after you've really tried to make it work, to realize when to get out. I think a lot of people don't do it, don't get out at the right time, but also a lot of people leave relationships when they could work things through. So that's a whole other story. But
sure.
But I wanted to speak to that, the fact that you did it even though it could have an impact on your careers and your credibility. But I think that writing this book and being able to come together and put your differences aside and work together is quite commendable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. And to Antonio's point, like I said earlier, when he first approached me, I just thought this is crazy, but it's not crazy because people today are meeting and dating in ways that we wouldn't have dreamed of 20 years ago. And if you don't understand it, if you don't have the tools, if you're not prepared, it can be very intimidating, devastating. It can fail. You might not know what you're doing out there. And if we can help to provide some of those tools, that was kind of our mission. But our first and foremost mission was to come together and show that, you can redefine your relationship. My daughter goes to school with many children whose parents are divorced, and they don't even speak. They text each other. And the children are, at that age, they're hurt. They just don't understand it. And they shouldn't have to deal with any of that. And then there's many parents that use their children as pawns, and so our message is very important, that you can redefine it. You don't have to live together, and you don't have to go back to whatever pulled you apart, but you can redefine it and make it work. It's just a different capacity. My children still feel we are a family. It's just a different dynamic. So very, very important message, really. And if I didn't feel whole, and I didn't feel comfortable, and I didn't feel if I was hurt, like the time when I was going through the divorce, I would have never been able to write this book. I would not be able to date. I wouldn't come to the relationship whole. So you've got to figure that out first. And that's for the people that are divorced. For the ones that are single, they may run into the same situations after a breakup. So the point is, you have to be you. You have to be happy. You have to be comfortable within your own skin. You have to love who you are first and foremost, and then you want that spouse. You don't need that spouse, and I think there's a big difference there too during your search.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely agree with you, and I think a lot of people coming out of breakups or any kind of breakup, whether it's a divorce or just somebody who was in a long-term relationship, they often jump right back into another relationship to fill a void, to make them feel less lonely, and they keep repeating the same problem over and over again, and they keep blaming the other person or the opposite sex for the problem, and they're not able to look within. So, and divorce is it's a huge shift in your life. You have been with somebody, you've defined yourself in a relationship, and so what kind of work would you suggest people do to feel more whole before they start dating?
Antonio, I'll defer that to you as a psychologist.
Well, I think that one of the most important things that a person needs to do is recognize when they're still not ready to begin this venture of looking for another person. I see I kind of coined this term that is been funny between my friends and I, and some people I think I call them undateable, and I think that when a person is just if this person's been married for 7 or 8 years and then they get separated, and then within 6 months or so they're divorced, and so they start dating, I think that this is really not a good time for someone to get really involved with them, just because that person has to take some time to recognize and understand who they are now, who they are as a single person, who they are as a single parent, and what it's like to live their life on their own, and be responsible for themselves, and not be a partner with another half. And so when we're still cringing at the thought of our ex dating someone else, or we're still hunting or haunting them and trying to find out what's going on in their life, and all of these things, then we're still kind of pretty raw, and so getting into a significant relationship, while it might feel amazing and wonderful to have these feelings of butterflies and attraction and all of those awesome feelings, it might be just a little bit premature. So I think the work that needs to be done involves really understanding what your relationship, how it started, what were the things about your partner that were attracted, what are the things that about your personality that worked well, and what are the things that didn't work well with that other person, and just exploring that relationship, understanding yourself, and then getting yourself into a position where you're dating from a position of strength because you want to, not because of a position where you feel needy and desperate and lonely. And if you need to get into a relationship because of financial reasons, or because of insecurities or loneliness. So if you're not ready emotionally, psychologically, socially, physically, then you're going to get into a dependent type of relationship, or a relationship based on some neediness that is not likely to be a good relationship. So getting yourself whole, getting yourself in a good place where you feel confident and excited to begin dating, and I think it changes your whole perspective, because you don't feel like you need to do this. You decide on dating a person because you want to, or you decide on going out tonight because you want to, not because you feel some kind of this loneliness that's driving it, or this sadness that's driving it.
Right. So, Theresa, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I absolutely agree, and I think that self-evaluation, that self-reflection, that time is so critical. And not just saying, okay, I'm going to give it 3 months, I'm going to give it 6 months, and I'll be ready in 6 months. No, you have to do the work. You have to redefine yourself. And if that means, if you're depressed and you need counseling, then you need to seek counseling. If whatever the ailment is, whatever the disorder is, if there is, you need to fix it. So you need to get yourself back to perhaps where you were before you got into a solid relationship, or before you made the commitment, whether it was marriage or whatever the commitment was. So I think you've got to get back to being the best you can be, and you have to do the work, and you have to take the time. And there's not a magic wand that says it's 3 months, 2 months, a year, 2 years for everybody. So only you can decide that. But it's very important you go through that before you even attempt to get that profile going and post that first picture.
Right, and I think, Sandy, you brought up a great point earlier when you talked about your guide, and the fact that people tend to sabotage themselves when they begin dating initially. Perhaps because of, like you had mentioned it, because they might be overly assertive, or their intentions are good. and the ways that they approach most of the other things in their life, it works, but when it comes to dating, perhaps it's not the best strategies, but I see that all of the time. Like two otherwise people that look like they otherwise would be a great match. One person, sabotages that dating or that initial attraction or interest, and then sometimes it's too late, and then and it's just a matter of not recognizing that this isn't probably the best approach, or perhaps you could do things a little bit differently and have different results. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, it's first of all, I want to speak to thank you for that about the guide. I think that people do sabotage themselves a lot, and they're not aware at all. And I used to do it. I mean, that's how I became an expert, by both studying with experts, but also my own personal experiences. I was really I did take the time. I took about 2 years before I went on my first date after my divorce, but I was building a business. I had bought my first home. I was trying to make sure my kids were emotionally healthy. And I thought it was really cool to tell men that I was really busy all the time, just super busy, crazy busy, very, very busy. And men just assumed that I had no time for them. And I was wondering why this one guy never called me back. And he said, well, I didn't think you'd have time to time slot me into your life. And I was like, oh, I guess I shouldn't be talking about that busyness all the time. So it's just a word, but yeah, I am busy. I have a full life, and I think people should have a full life. But if you're talking about like you have no time to breathe, you're going to give the impression that you don't have time for anybody but yourself. And so that may not be true, and you need to be careful with your words and careful the way you convey things.
Right. Nor is that an attractive, an attractive thing to hear. If you are giving the impression that you don't have a moment to breathe, that might not be an attractive thing to, that might not be very inviting for someone who's looking for, a partner or someone that they can, do things with and grow with. So that's the other that's the other side of it, where they feel like, I don't want to be part of that,
Exactly. And I think that, it's not a relational skill. It's not a relational quality to be busy all the time. And it's not. I mean, so a lot of the same things we bring to work, and I think that's why also a lot of very strong women who are very successful have the most trouble in many ways finding a relationship. And Theresa, you're a strong woman, and I'm wondering how the dating is going for you this time around.
Well, let me preface this, Sandy, with I just learned that even the Victoria's Secret models are having a hard time finding dates because of how busy they are.
Okay.
So I thought that was very interesting. I read that the other day, and I thought, good, I don't feel so bad. I feel actually much better.
Teresa, can I before you, and I know that you have some wonderful things to say, but I need to preface that by saying, when I met Theresa, we met in a hair salon. She was, a regional district vice president, something like that, of a chain of hair salons. And I went in and was getting my hair done. And the person that was doing my hair said, "Hey, you should think about dating Theresa." And I saw her, and I thought she was beautiful, and she was gorgeous, and she was, like everything that I wanted in a woman, and very smart and articulate and all of those things. But the first date that I went on with her, I remember meeting a friend afterwards and telling him that I never want to go out that woman. I never want to see her again. He's like, "Why? Did you?" I was like, "She's beautiful, she's gorgeous, but she's just too, busy and too, important and too, And I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go out with her again." Then I saw her again. And I said, maybe I should give it one more try. And then I went out with her again and felt the exact same way. I never called her after that. I didn't want to see her. And it wasn't until the third time that we kind of accidentally bumped into each other where she was a lot more real, and I felt like she was listening to me, and I was, we were communicating, and it wasn't about all of this other stuff that just seemed like so overwhelming, to me at the time. And So it was something that did make me hesitant to, want to go out with her until I, was able to sit down with her and be real and recognize that, hey, under all of this, success and craziness and this lifestyle of traveling and all of these things, she gets it the same way that I do. And so, at that point, that's when we started dating. But the first 2 times that we went out, I was definitely not going to pursue that. So I thought that was exactly one of the issues that we had, at the very beginning, or at least that I had. I don't think she was aware of it until after after a little while into our relationship, and I told her, I didn't want to see you again. That was just the way that I felt. But sorry to interrupt you.
Well,
take it.
No, I love that story, and before you talk, Theresa, I just wanted to just piggyback on that for a second, because this is such an important piece, and because Theresa had depth and she had vulnerability, but it was hidden by her success, by her business, right? So it's that the way we connect is through the vulnerability. It's through letting down the guard and accessing our heart, and that's one of the hardest parts for people to do. So I think people really, that's something that I really help my clients with a lot is accessing vulnerability. There are so many women that come to me who are so successful, who have made good money, who have always supported themselves, and every man they've attracted has been unsuccessful, has been disconnected emotionally, has been, not there for them, hasn't stepped up to the plate. And they didn't know how to be the person who would attract that kind of man. And so this happens quite often, that partners don't connect in the right way because of how you are being in the relationship. So, Theresa, let me let you take it from here.
Well, no, and that's a great point. And, I wasn't even aware that I was putting out that type of personality or person, or I didn't know that was kind of the vibe I was giving off. I was busy. I'd get up on Monday morning, fly to work. I flew to work all over the country and fly back on Thursday. And, I'd see Antonio on the weekends. And, it was perfect. And it was almost like a long-distance relationship, too. So, and those are always great. But, right, it's like, hello, goodbye. But the vulnerability is very important. But you know what, Sandy, you don't get to being vulnerable and letting someone know you completely and wholly until you know yourself first. I mean, if you have not slowed down to smell the coffee, smell the roses, to say, this is really what I want, this is really what I'm looking for, because as women, and today, we are just climbing that corporate ladder, and we are so busy that we've kind of gotten off track as to what we would want out of a relationship. It's like if it hits us, great. And years ago, that's what dating was. It was, if you saw him there, you were attracted to each other. You were at the restaurant. You were at a grocery store. You were at 25 years ago. That's how you met. You met at a club. You met through somebody else. And, well, we're just as busy today, but we've got to figure out a way to figure out who we are, what we want at this stage in our life, and how do we find that person with those qualities. And today, as busy as we are, there's that many outlets to choose from. So I think we have to understand that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to hear how dating is going for you, because I did ask you that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So have you learned to become more vulnerable in your dating and take down the busy work persona to connect?
I would say absolutely. I've learned to become more vulnerable. But I also want to add that if that first date, again, back to the busy, if it just wasn't there, if I didn't feel the chemistry, then there isn't a second date. So, like Tony had stated, we didn't go out until the third time where he thought he wanted to ever see me again. I just, at this point in my life, due to the busyness, I don't take
give
that.
someone that second.
No,
or third
I wouldn't
chance.
give them. No, I wouldn't, just because of the time constraints and within my life, within the life of my children, and so that's, if someone rocked my world, I'd go on that second date if I just felt, wow, this has just been wonderful. But as of now, I that hasn't happened yet. But I am vulnerable to it's I think you get to a point in your life where if you've done all of that work and you do feel whole and you feel like you are deserving of someone as nice, as giving as you are, then I look for that, absolutely. And there's go ahead, Tony.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, and not to speak for you, Theresa, but I think that one of the things that has happened with Theresa is that when it came to, I don't know, or you haven't shared with me. I mean, we talked about all of our history, but when it came to like online dating and dating people that you didn't know somehow prior, that hasn't been an area of too much tremendous success for you. However, there's Michael that she's dating now, and I know that that's someone that she knew from years back, and I'm not going to speak for you, but it appears to me that your relationship with him is looks good from the outside, at least.
Absolutely, Tony, and that's been recent in the last 6 months. But I was speaking to Sandy's point about going out there on that first date and being vulnerable. No, I think Michael's a wonderful man. I think he values the family first and foremost, and the fact that we have history. I've known him for almost 27 years. Says something. We were crazy about each other then, and so I agree with you. I agree. But I think just to answer Sandy's question, yes, the guard is down, and timing is of the essence. And I think that the guard has to be down. Otherwise, what wall are you hiding behind? What are you not wanting to share, and why would you bother doing that?
Right.
So. Yeah, I think that I want to speak to the second date thing after the break. I'm going to break in a minute to just talk about our sponsor again, but I do want to say that familiarity is great. I think what a lot of people are afraid of is pain and heartbreak, and
sure.
They're protecting themselves from getting hurt again. And the problem is they don't have the skills necessary to be able to process, their pain. They don't recognize red flags enough at the beginning so that they let things go on too long, and so there's a lot of reasons why people get into the wrong relationships. So I think,
sure.
there's a bigger picture here than, just let your guard down. I think you can't let your guard down unless you have other things in place. And
absolutely,
I talk
true.
about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let me give a quick shout out to Audible
sure.
again. They are a leading provider of spoken digital audio entertainment and information, and they really have quite a number of titles that you can choose from. Right now they have about 150,000, and that's quite a lot of books. It's more than I know
For
I
sure.
can read or listen to. And the great thing is that you can listen to them on any device, like your iPad, your iPod, your phone, your computer. People listen to them in the car all the time. I love having podcasts and audiobooks on long trips. So when you sign up at audibletrial.com/lastfirstdate, you get one free audiobook and a 1-month trial of the service. Some of the books that are on the bestseller list right now is one of the books that I just read called All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Did you guys read that?
Not me.
No.
No? Oh, it's a fantastic
but I'll
book.
put it on my list.
Me too.
I definitely recommend it. It's one of these epic novels that brings people from two different lives that converge. It's a wartime book from World War II. Takes place in France and Germany, and it's a story of children. I don't want to give away too much, but there's a lot of metaphor and beauty, and a lot about relationships, and we're reading it for our book club, which meets this Friday, so I'm excited about that. Another book that's on the bestseller list is 50 Shades of Grey, which may not be one of the best written books, but it certainly has.
I read them.
Okay, good. I've read them also. I just think it's created a conversation around sex and around not having boring sex and learning how to discuss hard limits, which is one thing they talk about a lot in the book, like really having these kinds of open conversations. To me, that's one of the benefits of having this be a bestseller. I don't know. What do you think, Theresa?
I would absolutely agree, and never thought about that until I read it. But yes, I think. Do you want to talk about taking down the walls and the barriers? I think that book, that the 3 books, do a great job doing that.
Yeah, and I think that's important.
Right.
And having conversations about everything, that there should be no barriers at all.
Yes.
That's what's great about dating at this age. It's like you get to have grown-up conversations and learn how to have better skills with confrontation. Another book on the bestseller list is Wild by Cheryl Strayed. That was a movie. I don't know if you guys saw. It was one of the nominated movies for an Oscar this year. Either one of you see that?
No, I did not.
Nope. Okay. Really good performance by Reese Witherspoon. She was great. It's about a woman
the hiking with the mother, and I meant to see that. No, yes. I will see that.
Really, I recommend that. And there's a book that I just read about. It's called Yes, Please by Amy Poehler, and it's narrated. It's basically, it sounds great. This is where an audiobook comes in handy. It's Amy Poehler is hosting a dinner party, and she has a guest list that include vocal appearances from Carol Burnett, Beth Myers, Kathleen Turner, Amy's parents. There's a whole bunch of people. It sounds really interesting, and so you can't get that from a book that you read. And Amy Poehler is hysterical. There's also a book by Gary Chapman, who wrote The 5 Love Languages. He wrote this for singles. So I love The 5 Love Languages. I think it's really important to understand how you express love, and a lot of times you're with a partner who expresses love in a completely different way, and you don't think they love you because they're not giving you gifts, which is how you express love, and maybe their way of expressing love is by touching you and showing affection. So it's really important to understand the most you can about yourself to have the most successful relationships. So those are just some of the bestsellers out of the 150,000 that are up right now on Audible. So try out Audible for your free month and your free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/lastfirstdate. And I want to thank you again for your support of our sponsor, Audible, and for giving yourself the gift of spoken audio entertainment. So let's go
I'm definitely back. Definitely a fan of Audible.com, and you know, I use it on my iPhone, and I use it when I'm working out because I can't. It's really difficult to read when you're on the treadmill, but it's wonderful. I was a fan of audiobooks from back in the day when we had cassettes in the car, and when I used to, commute to work for 45 minutes, I'd always be listening to one. So when Audible was available for the iPhone, it was just I love it, and it's definitely something that I use every day, and a big fan.
Oh, good. Well, thanks for that endorsement. And I also have always been a fan of the spoken word, and even with my kids when they were little, we used to get those books on tape to accompany reading because it helped them to learn better. Especially one of my kids who was a very visual learner. She had trouble with auditory processing, and being able to hear it and see it at the same time was really helpful to her. So
that's great.
These are great. Yeah. So we're back with Antonio Borrello and Theresa Pavone, and I got your name right. So Theresa, I wanted to talk to you about that second date. I know you're in a relationship now, which is great, and I just am curious because I'm really not a fan of expecting great chemistry on a first date. I think at this age, instant chemistry is often instant disaster. It's often people lose themselves when they have that kind of butterfly on a first date. That I'm going to know it when I see it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's why I often recommend that people give a person a second chance, especially when there is some connection, when you feel there's some attraction, there's some connection. Maybe the person wasn't so exciting on a first date. Sometimes people are really nervous. They don't show their best selves on a first date. And so you might be surprised, and this happens a lot, where a person is really different on a second or a third date. So I just want to put that out there because I really don't agree with the boom, pow kind of first date or nothing, so sort of all or nothing kind of experience.
Well, you know what? When I say chemistry, Sandy, I'm not just referring to looks. Chemistry could include how articulate they are. It could include their sense of humor. It could include. I mean, there's various reasons that we would be attracted to someone. So it wouldn't be just the looks that would give me butterflies. So that's I didn't mean that from just the looks. But if I was on a dinner date and over a 2 to 3 hour conversation, I would want to know that there was chemistry, that there was a connection at some level before I moved on or went on a second date. But that's also, and let me back up for a moment, because if we are on the various Zeus, Match, eHarmony, Our Time, Christian Mingle, Black People Meet, Plenty of Fish, JDate, Flirt, there's so many. There's 14, what is the exact number? 1,500 dating websites. So if I had met this person online, and today this is so common, I'm sure there would have been a little bit of conversation up front before we ever sat down for a cup of coffee or a cocktail or dinner. So I would have gotten to know a little bit more about them, their interests, what they do, how do they live, how do they make a living. So a lot of that, I would assume, would have already been established before I went. I will share one example on Tinder. Tony introduced me to Tinder and a couple of my cousins, and I got on there about a year ago, and I was so excited. I kept swiping, and I was matching everyone. I thought I was Hollywood. Look at me, matching everyone. And nor did I know that the men all swipe right. So anybody that I matched with, I didn't know this was a technique of theirs. I thought I hit the jackpot. So there were two men that I was really interested in that looked good. Their profile looked great. Their pictures, they had great photos, and I kept saying, well, and you can set it up geographically, so, I didn't want to go out any further than 60 miles. So, great, they're in my backyard, so to speak. This will be great. I'll meet them for coffee. They look good. Their profile sounds good. We chatted, and I kept saying, well, what day would be great? Well, I can come over this day. And I was like, you can come over where? Well, I can come over. And I'm like, where? To the coffee, to Starbucks? What do you mean you can come over? No, to your house. I was like, are you? Both of them, those were the two that I was chatting up with. And, of course, I didn't know initially it started out as kind of a hookup site. So I was totally in the blind going, did it say hooker somewhere on my profile? Because I must have missed that. So I was like, Tony, you want to fill me in on this? So go ahead, Tom. True story.
Great.
Yeah. Well, I do think that it has there certainly are a lot of people that are on Tinder to hook up, but I can tell you that every single person that I know, with the exception of maybe one or two, has Tinder on their phone. Whether they take it seriously or not is something different, but it's certainly a phenomenon that has just exploded in the last few years. It's got, and I think it's because obviously it's got these game-like, it's a game almost, and it's something that's so easy to set up through Facebook, and one of the challenges for online dating, or probably not even a challenge, it's just it takes work. it takes work to craft emails, and it takes work to create a profile, and Tinder made it simple. I know that when we were preparing for doing research for our book, we had people that did research in their areas in New York, in California, in Toronto, in South Florida, and in Texas. And then we also did our own in Detroit. And, there was probably about 50% of the people that were on Tinder don't even have a word, don't even say one word on their profile. It's just about a picture. Oh. And so, that's definitely easy to set up, and it has, again, it has some allure to it, and it's definitely something that is, it probably is, similar to like MySpace was to Facebook. Perhaps there's going to be a new or different app that takes a lot of the same characteristics of Tinder, but makes it a little more serious and better in some ways. But it's certainly here, and you see people all the time making references to it, and if you do a search on Google on Tinder, you'd just be surprised at all of the amazing things that you will find that have to do with it. So,
and people are finding relationships and getting married through Tinder. It's not just about hookups.
Yeah,
I mean, it was,
for sure.
as Theresa said, it was originally a hookup site. There is something called Stitch that's for older people, and it is more serious. And there's something called J-Swipe for Jews. There's all kinds of things now that are all swipeable.
Right.
So
right.
it is. I personally thought Tinder was fun. Yeah, Hinge, exactly. So tell us what's different about your book? What are you bringing that's unique in terms of relationships and dating in this digital age that we live in?
Well, I think that the book is unique in a number of ways, and it's we certainly started the book because we quickly learned when we started dating that the things that the rules of dating that might have existed 10 or 15 years ago didn't involve things like texting a person or requests for photos or selfies, and the ways in which people engage and communicate with one another have changed so much over the last 15 years that if you're not familiar with the rules or perhaps what something means when someone says something to you on a text or on social media. So that was initially our approach. Was we wanted to address those things because Theresa and I had both been out of the dating world for the entirety of our relationship, and so that was our first our first thing. So the things that we learned through our experiences with dating in 2014 and 2013 was the first thing. But the second thing, when we started writing it became, and initially the name of the book was Dating 2.0, and then we changed it to Relationships 2.0, because we started talking about the important things that people need to address prior to make sure that they're ready for getting into a relationship or to start dating. And so the book became a lot deeper in that sense. And it's unique because we have, both of us have obviously our academic and professional background in psychology and in relationships, but we also have an opportunity to look at, three sides of the same relationship: the dating phase that we both went through, the relationship, and then the divorce and post marriage aspect. And we have it from my perspective and her perspective, and so we also have that in addition to the experiences that I have as a man are oftentimes quite different than what she experiences as a woman. So those are some unique things that I think make our book special. and something that we're super proud of. And it's more than just a dating do's and don'ts kind of book. I mean, we certainly talk about all of the we talk about online dating, we talk about mobile dating applications, but and we talk about how to create attraction and interest, and through texting and talking, and what to do on your first dates, and preparing yourself for those things. So we certainly talk about those things, but we also get into more or deeper things about having to do with what does this mean when you have a new relationship or a new dating relationship that's starting, and it's characterized by A, B, and C, and what does this mean? And so I think it's special that way as well. Theresa, do you agree with that, or
absolutely.
Did I miss anything?
No, and I think just you addressed the technology has changed, so it's made it possible to meet people, and we just kind of want to show you the best way how to present yourself, and not just in your profile, but on that first date. Some of the do's and don'ts, like Tony said, but we also shared some of our crazy, funny stories as well. And like you said, we bring three sides to the coin, to the book. So
that's great. So can you share with us one tip about how to best present yourself, or how to prepare for a first date?
If you want it from a male's perspective or from a female's perspective?
Well,
because I can
both.
take that, or Theresa. Well, I think that as a man preparing for a date with someone that I perhaps I met them online, I would certainly want to know or want to take a good amount of time knowing everything that they had indicated in their profile. And I would also go back through our communications and make sure that there isn't anything that I had that might have been something that's very important to them. I certainly don't want to miss that and not remember those things. I think that's important. And I also think that it's important to have obviously the recent pictures, so that you don't take someone by surprise, being 30 pounds heavier than you were in your profile pictures, because that definitely gets things started off in a bad way. But if your profile pictures are accurate and or recent, and that you are honest about who you are in your profile, and obviously remembering everything that you can about a person, taking the time to go back and making sure that you don't say, so what was, how were your patients today, when the person might be selling cars or something like that. So you don't want one of those types
right.
of mistakes. But I also think that it's a lot of times, and we had talked about this earlier, there's, people that are very nervous, and, they take things personally if something isn't going to work out. And that puts a lot of pressure on you. And I have a tweet that says something like, trying to understand why a person might not be into you is like trying to understand why someone likes chocolate more than vanilla. You're not going to find out, and it shouldn't matter anyway. I mean, if you are yourself and you're confident, and most of the time dates are not going to work out. I mean, it's kind of the opposite of a job interview. Most of us who have been on job interviews have a pretty high success rate. Like if we go on an interview, if you take a survey of 100 people and ask them, when you go on an interview, how many of those had resulted in a job? Most of them will say things like, maybe I went on 7 interviews in my life and got 5 jobs, or going on dates is not like that at all. Most of the time it's not going to work out. So, enjoy it and enjoy the experience with the person, and know that that it's an experience, and if the stars are aligned and things magic happens, that's wonderful, but it's certainly not it's certainly an expectation. I mean it's certainly not the rule.
Right. That's good. Theresa?
I would say to the women out there to think about dating smart. first and foremost. I mean, we want it to be fun, like Tony said, and enjoy the experience, but I think you have to date smart. Definitely use your own transportation. Please meet in public at a place. You never know, and there have been many cases where you're meeting a person and it's not the person in the profile. You think you know them because you've chatted with them, and so I would say think safety first. Being a little bit nervous is natural, so that's okay. Enjoy those little being nervous, but just think safety first, I would say. So do not go to someone's home. Meet in public first. And then watch for crazy red line signs. Like in Antonio and I discuss it in the book. Are they asking you for money? Do they travel quite often? And, they're never in one place at the same time, meaning are they married or are they someone else? So just watch for those signs, because what they chatted up with you about earlier may not be the truth. And just be on guard. That's all. Mm-hmm. Your gut will take you to the next step, whatever that step is, your instincts.
Well, a lot of people's instincts are clouded with past experiences, and they're not always so trustworthy.
Well, if Hugh Jackman's sitting across from you, then okay, I can understand it. But anybody else, no, there's no cloudy judgment allowed when it comes to your safety.
Yeah. So we just have about 5 minutes left. I want to ask you quickly, what was the hardest part about writing this book together?
Well, I think that it and the way that we did it was, as I had mentioned earlier, it was something that I had started a few years ago, and it was a project that I had that was all mine, and so a lot of the content was already written, and then what had to happen was, I was like, well, Theresa, listen, I don't want you to just okay everything and say this is okay. You need to go back and, do your own research, come up with your own conclusions, and let's add your perspective, a woman's perspective, to this as well. I mean, obviously, I tried to address those things, but there certainly were, quite a few incidences when, we disagreed about something, and so that was wonderful because we included that, and we made sure that we make sure that we let people know that we don't agree on this particularly. The other part that was kind of hard, I think, at least it was for me, was that hearing some of the stories, and we're talking about something that I'm finding out all of her dating secrets or her history or the things that she went through, and listening to and comparing stories, it wasn't always easy to do. So certainly it wasn't weird to write this with her, but it wasn't always the easiest thing because we're dealing with things that we have a history. The two of us have that relationship history. So that was probably a challenging point, but it kept things honest and it made it real, and that's kind of how we shared it. So when people say that they wrote from the heart, I think that's definitely the case, and not always very easy to Sometimes I look at some of those some of the things in our book and think like, wow, it kind of hit me again, but it's definitely real. Mm-hmm. What was hard for you, Theresa?
I can imagine.
The same thing, hearing the stories and, going back to at a time when we were dating, so, and you're always comparing. So it was funny. Some of it was just tongue-in-cheek, but like Antonio said, it was from the heart and it was very, very honest.
Yeah, well, that's important, and I'm looking forward to reading it. So tell us when the book is going to be available and how people can order it.
So we decided that we wanted to publish this book in a non-traditional way because we wanted to make it available to anyone, who could benefit from it regardless of their financial situation. So we decided to publish it or to fund the publishing of it through Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding website, a wonderful website that brings people together. And so what we were doing is we were offering. So we wrote the book, and we had it edited, and we were when we began the Kickstarter campaign in, I think it was January 12th. We were at the point where the book just needed to have the interior design finalized, and then send it to publishing to get it printed. And so we started this Kickstarter campaign, and we realized that we made some mistakes, and we were giving the book away to anyone who was willing to share our Kickstarter campaign on their social media. And so our launch didn't go as we had planned, so we took that down and decided instead to go ahead and have it published and make it available. And then so we're funding it ourselves, and so within probably, we're hoping within 30 days. We're just making some final negotiations with some printers, and once we hit that go button, it's just a matter of a few weeks from there to get our hands on the first hard copies.
Great. Well, I can't wait to read it, and I'm sure people are going to really benefit from your combined experience and your combined wisdom. And I thank you for being on my show today.
Thank you for having us, Sandy. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Great talking
My
to you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Great talking to you, too. And so thank you, everyone, for listening today, and I hope you all go on your last first date very soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.